Okay?
Okay.
Okay, great. Let's do it. Ciao, this is Strano, an independent podcast supported by Spreaker Prime. My name is Ame and I always felt weird, strange my entire life. This podcast is my journey looking for other people that feel or felt like me or that can at least give me an interesting point of view on that. Doing this podcast, I get the chance to talk with people that do things that I like, people that play or played in bands that I love, and today's episode makes no exception. My guest has been making great music since 1979. He played bass on several masterpiece albums. You might know him, especially for having played in a highly influential and much loved band called Hüsker Dü. But he has performed with so many amazing acts, such as Gang Font, Grey Area, and Porcupine. He now has a band called UltraBomb, a power trio that I invite you to check out if you haven't already. My guest's name is, of course, Greg Norton, and I feel so lucky to have the chance to talk with him today. Hi, Greg, and thanks for being here on my podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I definitely identify as a weirdo, so
I
so
love
it's
it. Yeah.
perfect.
Great. It's a good match. And it's also the first question I'm going to ask you because it's the thing that I always ask all of my guests when we start. And I want to know if you ever felt weird, strange, different from the other people. And if yes, how did it affect your music and the things you do?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I've always felt like I was, a little weird, a little odd. Getting into punk rock, that was like finding a place where being weird uh, is embraced and encouraged. So it's like, finding your own tribe type of thing. I used to always feel that I was a weirdo magnet because for some reason, people that are a little bit odd just naturally gravitate to me.
So, what's the most precious thing that you've received from your being or feeling strange?
Just the probably the best thing is, like I said, discovering punk rock and realizing that I could play weird music and there was an audience for it. Before getting into punk rock, I had a lot of varied musical interests. I liked a lot of early electronic music, somebody like Martin Sabatnik or Wendy Carlos. But I was also into avant-garde jazz. So getting into punk rock, I tried to embrace some of those things in some songwriting, and I've never been classically trained as a musician. I have a fundamental understanding of music theory, but it was never anything that I, you know, dove deep into. But, I like to play things that sound right to me, and they might sound weird to somebody else, but but it works.
Yeah, it does. And so, since we're talking about music, I'm curious to know some of your first memories of music. I mean, any detail, image, smell, sound, or random thing that comes to your mind.
Well, I'm the youngest in my family. I was born in 1959, so growing up in the 60s, I remember actually watching the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Wow.
My dad listened to a lot of big band jazz, Stan Kenton being his favorite. And, my sister obviously was into listening to the Beatles, and my older brother was, kind of came of age when the first, heavy metal records started being released. So I had a lot of varied influences on my young mind. And yeah, music has just always been a part of my life.
Cool. Amazing. Yeah. And just out of curiosity, how did it feel to see the Beatles happening?
Well, I mean, I was very young, so at that age, you just think that that's normal.
Mhm.
You don't realize that it's culturally a revolution happening around you. You just see it as normal.
Tell me about one or two of the scariest or most dangerous things you've done as a child or as an adolescent.
One of my earliest memories actually was probably 4 years old. And I remember my family lived in Omaha, Nebraska at this point. And I remember my mom leaving in her car. And I'm pretty sure she was going to go get her hair done. And I vaguely knew where this shopping strip mall was, where the beauty salon was. And I jumped on my tricycle and I went riding after her. Made it maybe about a mile from the house, probably halfway to where she was. And there were a group of teenagers hanging out underneath a bridge, and they ended up walking me back to my house.
Wow.
But that was kind of a crazy thing. It's 4 years old, just jump on your trike. It's like, oh, I know where I'm going.
So, getting back to feeling strange, Hüsker Dü themselves were a rare bird in the hardcore scene for sure. You made it very clear pretty early on that you were going to interpret hardcore, punk, and other genres your own way. You had your own sound and you kept pushing it further throughout your career. And the result today is that Hüsker Dü still sounds like Hüsker Dü and no one else. The legacy is still strong. And I want to know if, like, did you feel back then that you were a different animal? Was it always easy to be?
Bob Grant and myself, we weren't trying to sound like anybody else. We developed our sound. We continued to push that. And the main thing is we were just being ourselves. We didn't fall into the any camp where it was like, you know, be different, but be like us. We never wanted to be pigeonholed with a look or even the name of the band, where somebody would look at it and go like, oh well, this is what they look like, so obviously their music must sound like this.
Mhm.
uh it was a band that continually evolved and kept pushing it, and oddly enough, when we did embrace the hardcore sound, I kind of felt at the time that we were taking a step backwards. And a lot of the earlier Hüsker stuff, the melody was always there. The tempos weren't as fast. The songs were maybe a little bit darker sounding. And when we got back and recorded Land Speed Record, I think we actually alienated a lot of our hometown fans, because all of a sudden we were like this super fast hardcore band. But that was a phase that we in a way needed to work our way through. We did embrace it, but out of that we forged melody back into the hardcore aesthetic, and essentially changed music and set the stage for what became alternative rock and the success that all those bands had in like the 90s.
So, actually, for you, it was pretty natural. You just followed your own path, right?
Right. Yep. We followed our own path. We always told ourselves that as long as we're having fun, we're going to keep doing this. And we made it 9 years. And unfortunately, when the band broke up at the end of 1987, January of '88, it did get to a point where it's like, okay, this is not fun anymore. It's more business than fun. And the breakup of the band most likely was inevitable, but the way it happened was a shock.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk about the impact that the end of a romantic relationship has on people. But in reality, I mean, there are many things that leave a mark when they come to an end. And I guess Hüsker Dü were a huge presence, of course, in the early years of your life. Did you ever think that one day you would break up back then while you were playing? And what was it like for you to learn to live again when the band disbanded? Do you have any particular memories?
Yes, I mean, being in a band is like being in a marriage. You're tied to the other people, the other band members. You try to navigate and get along, and but there will always be little arguments over things. Yeah, when Hüsker broke up, I had already moved to Red Wing, so I was, an hour outside of Minneapolis. So I felt it was difficult for me to jump back into music, just because I didn't really have many options to play with people. And every band that I've been in post Hüsker, again, it's that marriage dynamic, and people don't always get along, and but figuring out when it's time to move on from something or from someone, figuring out how to set healthy boundaries to maintain my peace of mind and things like that. So, it's one of those things where you learn that you don't have control over everything. And the things that you don't have control over, you just need to let go, and you can control how you respond to it, but you can't really control how somebody else acts.
True. Well, let's talk about touring. Since we're talking about being in a band, and touring is always a big part of that. I'm curious to know if you have any memories of, like, maybe, I don't know, a couple of weird things that happened to you while on the road.
In the early Hüsker days, particularly on the west coast of the United States, cities are very far away. So we would do a lot of overnight drives
Mm.
to get to the next town. And I did all of that driving. So, I just remember like driving through the desert southwest of the US late at night, looking at the stars and thinking like, okay, well, where are these UFOs that everybody keeps talking about? Definitely saw some odd lights in the sky, but never really anything concrete where it was like, oh my God, that's a UFO. But just thinking about it, outside of that, I would say, and I don't know if this qualifies as strange or weird, but it's a memory that definitely sticks with me, is meeting Lemmy. Uh,
Wow.
in between two shows at Irving Plaza in New York. And Lemmy was with Bill Laswell, and he introduced me to Lemmy, and I asked him if he saw our first set. And he said, yeah, I saw it. And I'm like, well, what did you think? And he said, it was pretty fucking loud. And I was like, holy shit. Lemmy just said that we were loud. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Amazing. And so your current band, UltraBomb, has it all. I mean, it's fast, it's melodic. Just, if you ask me, the right amount of rawness. How has your approach to music changed over the years, and how does it feel now to be in this new band?
I mean, the UltraBomb story itself is a little weird. Originally it was Finney McConnell from the Mahones and Jamie Oliver from the UK Subs. Our very first record was recorded in Berlin, and
Mm.
that record, the first day in the studio, was the first time I'd ever actually met either of them in person.
Wow.
And we wrote 10 songs in those first couple of days. We needed to make the decision to replace Jamie on drums due to visa issues in North America. And so Derek O'Brien is the replaced Jamie just over a year ago. And Finney and I had a falling out last winter, about a year ago, and he decided to step back and leave the band, and told me that the band was his gift to me. I contemplated changing the name, but ultimately decided that I have a lot invested in UltraBomb. We've got two great records. I wrote all of the lyrics for the band and still am writing all the lyrics, with the exception of West in the Summertime on our last album, Dying to Smile. That was one of Jamie's compositions. And I lucked out with Ryan Smith, who plays lead guitar in Soul Asylum. He lives in here in Minnesota. And Ryan joined the band. We just finished recording a new album at the beginning of November. We're hoping to have a single release before the end of the year. The new record itself will be out on DC Jam Records in March of 2026. The record's called The Bridges That We Burn. I just feel extremely lucky working with Brian and Derek. I felt it was going to be hard to replace Finney from a songwriter aspect as a partner to write with, but Ryan actually has been extremely easy to work with, and I feel he's actually making me a better songwriter as well, working with him and hearing his ideas. So very excited about the new lineup. It's unfortunate that things didn't work out with the old lineup. Jamie Finney and I recorded two brilliant albums, and the new record does sound like a natural progression, a step forward in the evolution of the sound of the band.
Great, yeah. How did your approach change to making music from the Oscar day? Did it change at all?
In the very early Hüsker days, it was the three of us learning how to be a band, learning how to write songs. So there was a lot more collaboration and sharing of ideas as Hüsker progressed, and particularly once we signed to Warner Brothers, then it became more of the Bob versus Grant and who's going to write more songs type of thing. And that became difficult for me as a songwriter because I do like to have somebody to collaborate with. It's just an easier way for me to work. UltraBomb definitely felt, took me back to those early Hüsker days where it was, the three of us working on the songs. It's a full collaboration of three people working on something. It's interesting. Again, it's another kind of step in just learning how to do things and getting better at it.
Tell me about both the easiest and the most challenging time you had in studio making a record with any band.
Oddly enough, this last record that we're just finishing up, recorded in Minneapolis, it has been super easy. I mean, we did 11 songs in 4 days and finished everything. Hüsker Dü always worked very efficiently in the studio. Our first three albums were recorded with Spot out in Los Angeles at Total Access. So, we only had so many hours in the studio, so we had to be efficient and work on it. I would say probably, I don't know if it was the most difficult, but probably the most emotionally taxing or frustrating time was UltraBomb's second album. The music was written separately from the lyrics. Then he's like, okay, I think, Greg, you should pick what lyrics go with what songs this time. And, some of them worked really well. Some of them we had to really took a lot of like on the fly editing to make it work. And that was emotionally hard to do. This latest record was super easy, went really, really smooth. And I think the results are fantastic. I think we got lucky with those first two UltraBomb records that they turned out as good as that they did.
Great. So, if we could send two songs from any of your bands in space just to let ET discover your music, what songs should we send?
Well, off the Dying to Smile UltraBomb album, I would say the song Doggo, because, we love dogs. And the song is about the eternal cycle that we put ourselves through emotionally with these small beasts who we let into our hearts and share our homes, but we outlive them. So we end up having many dogs throughout our lifetimes. And then eventually you're going to have your last dog, and the dog's going to end up getting a new owner because you're not around, type of thing. So I love Doggo, and I would actually opt for the song Artificial Stars, which will be our first single off this new record. That whole idea came about. The lines are, talking about, after the apocalypse and we're sitting in our bunkers comparing our scars, but now we live in a world where we can't go outside, so all we have to appreciate are artificial stars that are projected. I would say those two.
Cool. If you found a time traveling DeLorean in front of your house and you could use it for one day only to go anywhere in time, where would you go and what would you like to do there?
I thought about this question a lot. I actually have like two answers. My first thought, like anywhere in time, I think it would be really crazy to actually go back, say, 15, 20,000 years ago and discover these lost civilizations that have been lost to time. It's like, yeah, I'd go to Atlantis and check it out. I think that would be crazy. And the other answer, my older sister passed away last April, and I would go back to see her one more time.
So sorry to hear that. What's something that helped you face hard times, and what would you say to encourage someone who is facing a hard time?
It kind of gets back to knowing what's in your control and what's not in your control. And if it's not in your control, don't worry about it. What I like to tell young bands is to, keep having fun and keep being friends. Never get into a situation where one person in a group feels that their contribution is greater than anyone else's, because everybody contributes in different ways. And stay friends. I think once someone in a group setting decides that their contribution is greater than what anybody else is doing, that's a death knell for that project. But then, also when that does happen, know how to set a boundary and move on, keep growing. The only person I ever want to be better than is the person I was yesterday.
That's great. Three things you're grateful for today.
Dogs, music, and friendship.
Yeah, perfect. And so, final question I always ask all of my guests is to suggest as a song, a book, and a movie. They don't have to be your favorite, but I mean, just stuff you enjoy.
So there was this movie called Buckaroo Banzai Across the Ninth Dimension that came out in late 80s, maybe early 90s. John Lithgow was in it. But Buckaroo Banzai was this, I think he was like a brain surgeon, but he also had this rock band, and the rock band also then fought intergalactic crime. it's it's just a fun, amusing romp. Kind of popped in my head. For books, Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe is definitely a book that makes me laugh out loud all the time. And musically, Steve Reich, Music for 18 Musicians, I think is just a mesmerizing 60 plus minute piece of music that can transcend a lot of things.
Great. Again, thanks for taking the time to do this. Thanks for the suggestions. Thanks for the stories. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate being on, and I appreciate being recognized as someone weird.
Great. Thanks a lot again, Greg.
Yep, grazie. Ciao.
Ciao. And thank you for listening to this episode. Go check out and support Ultrasound and all the good music Greg made. If you enjoyed this podcast, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and share it with your friends and loved ones, and why not with your enemies as well. And make sure to check out the other episodes. I've been talking with a lot of amazing people like Mike Kinsella from American Football, Bill Stevenson from The Descendants and Black Flag, Eric Melvin from NoFX, Joe Lally from Fugazi, Matt Pryor from the Get Up Kids, Chris Leo from the Van Pelt, and so many more. Go check them out. Ciao, ciao.